Welcome to the virtual community of the Center for Spiritual Living, Napa Valley. I'm Reverend Jay Lang. I'm the spiritual director of this community. Our beliefs are based on ancient wisdom as well as progressive spirituality. Our mission is to show a way to live fully and wholly through the practical application of spiritual principles. Each week, we offer insights and steps on how to heal and reveal the divine truth in each of us and how to help create a world that works for all people and all life on this planet. So thank you for joining us, and we so appreciate your participation in our virtual community. Moving forward, I wanted to make sure, this is really about, the groundhog. We didn't really need to wait for him for our spring because it's here. You can feel and see the elements of spring around us, the mustard plants, the early bulbs that are blooming. It's quite beautiful. And so not only are we celebrating early spring, this month of love we have, but also choir season begins today. So it's part of their spring season. So if you're interested in the choir, stay around after the service. You won't be long. Plenty of time to a short rehearsal today. Just kind of get back into the flow of things, because we know there's something else going on today. Some sort of football game going on, right? Just kind of curious. It's always interesting. Now, it is a regional team, so how many people are supporting the 49ers today? And how many people are supporting the Chiefs? One person. There's always one in the crowd. Oh, yeah, we're all one. That's right, we're all one. And how many people don't care? Yeah. There's always that, too. You know what's interesting? This month we're celebrating all the colors of love, all the diversity of love. And so, as I mentioned, we have this early spring happening. But also, if you're not in the Super Bowl, there is the Puppy Bowl. Now, I know that, Linda, you're really a fan of the Puppy Bowl more. And it's on Animal Planet. So this is on Animal Planet channel, and there's like 90 puppies this year, record number of puppies, all shelter, and it's just really cute. They're all adoptable, and so, it's quite the cute thing. If you get tired of the game, just switch over, or, alternate there. That's right. And what's interesting about that is what we know is there is people that are different levels of excited about the game. We know that. Last year, I heard at the Super Bowl there was a friend of mine was there, and next to him was an empty seat, and he couldn't believe that somebody who had a ticket wasn't there. So he looked over there, and there was another guy there, and he goes, do you know whose seat this is? Who wouldn't come? And he goes, oh yeah. My wife and I bought these 2 tickets, and she passed away recently, and so. I was really sad about that. And he goes, well, and my friend said, well, couldn't you find someone to go with you? And he goes, oh, no, all my friends are at the memorial. Not funny? No. Yeah, so some people take the game more seriously than others, right? And for others, there's the Puppy Bowl today, or there's the commercials, or there's the halftime show. But it's a social event, right? But it'll be good either way. There's a sense of oneness with all life, right? But also so going back to this idea of this being Groundhog Day, and this being with the colors of love that we're talking about this month, what I know about love is that there's over 7.5 billion people on this planet. And each person has different ways to express love on any day. So on any given day, there's hundreds of billions expressions of love. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about the colors of love. It is this humanness that we have that gives it the color, the texture, the sound of love that is a diversity. We know out of the many there is one, that this one source of life, of love, is spirit itself, and out of the one comes many, the many colors, and that we appreciate it. And even though sometimes the love we experience from other people may be disguised, may be hidden, we may not be able to see it. We know it is there because everybody is this divine being. Everybody has this divine love within them that is them, that is the truth of their being. This particular topic for the month about the colors of love, as well as today talking about for the love of God, is being talked about in every center for spiritual living, all 400 centers for spiritual living across the nation. And our spiritual leader, Dr. Ken Gordon, has been our leader for 8 years, and actually we used to be 2 organizations, the International Centers for Spiritual Living, the United Centers for Spiritual Living. And for an organization, for a denomination that talks about oneness, most of us thought it was pretty silly to have 2 organizations. So we merged into one, and so Dr. Gordon was actually the leader of the International. I was a part of a church that was united, so I was very happy that we came together. So he was part of that leader. So really, he's been a leader for this organization for over 15 years and been a minister for over 30 years. So I wanted to introduce him today. He introduces the topic for this month. He does this every now and then, but I don't often show it. But I want to show it now because he is being termed out of his time as being a spiritual leader, and I want to make sure you know who he is and honor who he is. And then in February, Kristen and I go to Denver to vote for a new spiritual leader. We have 5 delegates from this center who will vote for that spiritual leader. And it'll be somebody new, we know that, and there are some great choices. But here's Dr. Ken Gordon.
And this month is given to us by our ministerial students in the Regeneration Program. And they're Dan Granda from Orlando, Evan Dow Williamson from Santa Rosa, Kristen Ashley Moore,
Yay!
Lydia Joy Ayers from San Diego, Audra Nichols from
Who was here last week if you met her.
And Russ Legier from Chicago, Illinois. And their theme for this month is All the Colors of Love. And this week's theme is For the Love of God. What we're talking about is the beauty and the magnificence of life, and how we have an option and a choice in the world to be able to either love it or not love it. I'll give you a prime example. I love this time of year. It's so quiet, it's so beautiful, it's so serene, and it's so magnificent to be in the midst of it. And yet, I've got Dr. Deborah, who's out driving around right now, getting ready to go away.
His wife.
And I'll tell you, she does not love it. She does not love the snow in any way, shape, or form when she's in the car driving. And yet, that's an option and that's a choice that we have. And the choice that we have is to love where we're at, love what we do, love how we do it. And when we do that, what happens is our life gets filled with love because we attract what it is that we think. Our attitude becomes our reality. Now, I'll share with you that Dr. Holmes.
So I just wanted to give you, he goes on a little bit and to begin talk about it. And I just wanted you to experience who he is and the wisdom and power that he is. And I just honor him, and he'll be giving a talk in February, and we'll honor him at that point. But also this idea, I wanted to show him because it's a great example of this phrase about for the love of God, because it can be both an expletive, you know, it can be a point of agony in our lives, and it can also be an opening to prayer, an opening to Spirit's power within us. And I know when I loved his example, because when I moved to Colorado, I spent 30 years in Colorado, from warmer Texas and into the snowy conditions. At first, I loved it, but then driving in it was a challenge, and there were some expletives definitely. So I got a four-wheel drive Jeep Cherokee, and I thought I was all set because boy, that thing plowed through the snow and the ice. The only problem is it didn't necessarily stop any quicker than any other vehicle. In fact, it was a heavier vehicle, so it took longer. And you know, when an object in motion, it stays in motion, especially on ice. And so there was a couple times I was driving, and you'd be like at a four-way stop, and I'd stop, and my car would keep moving, and everybody around me is watching me, going, "Oh my God, is he coming my way? Is he coming my way?" You know, there's slow motion, but it would be, and then I was like able to hit a curb, and oh, everybody's breathing again. So. And I learned how to love snow, and I learned how to drive in snow, and I went up in the mountains and also love skiing. And so when Chris and I go in later here in February, I'm going to take an extra day and go skiing because there's some great places to ski. But you know, it's you learn to accept what is, but in this metaphor for it being about love, we also learn about love, that it may not be exactly what we think it's going to be, that, you know, at times love brings us agony, brings us disappointment, hurt, and yet it also brings us joy. And it seems to be part of who we are. Marianne Williamson, I love what she spoke. I guess it's safe to quote her again. I think it was safe before, but she's always been a spiritual teacher for me, you know, an interpreter of the Course in Miracles. She's done so eloquently. And just in her own right, some of her quotes are just so profound. So she says, "Love is what we are born with. Fear is what we learn. The spiritual journey is the unlearning of fear and prejudices and acceptance of love back in our hearts. Love is the essential reality and our purpose on earth. To be consciously aware of it, to experience love in ourselves and others is the meaning of life. Meaning does not lie in things, it lies in us." So here's this whole concept that in purity, it is the spiritual birth that we had that is love, that we can find anytime we want to within ourselves, but when we go out into the world, we might not experience it. We adapt, and we are fearful, and we're concerned, and we're anxious because of love. And yet it calls us to greater and greater expressions. Maya Angelou, I always loved her poetry. She said, "In the flush of love's light, we dare to be brave." So, you know, there are many kinds of love, and we know that right away. There's friendship love, family love, romantic love, and there's this deeper spiritual love too, and it all calls us forward. And it is this love in our human life that calls us forward, and we dare to be brave. Maya Angelou continues, "And suddenly we see that love cost us all we are and will ever be. Yet it is only love that sets us free." So we continue to go through that discomfort and sometimes agony that is for the love of God, and we let go of that hurt, that disappointment, and we recognize some ways we need to do that. We need to find the love of God within us, for the love of God to let go of that disappointment. And we refine that unconditional, pure love that is available to us, that we can connect with in this way and just be. What I know about, as I mentioned, out of the one comes these many expressions, all the colors of love, that the different colors of love that we have make us more creative, more open, and more loving when we allow these full expressions, when we're not closed off or in fear or in anxiety. I've been teaching this class. We've had one class in it so far, the Creative Genius, and it is available if you're still interested in it. But one thing we've been talking about in the creative process is that when you're, whether in business or socially or for whatever purpose, you're getting together with a diverse group of people, you're more likely to come up with a more creative, more powerful, more innovative solution when you have a diverse group than when you have a same group. So there was an experiment done with college students, and they gathered two groups together to solve a mystery. And the first group, they was pretty homogeneous group. They had the same kind of classes, the same kind of social structure, and they got together in this experiment, and they were able to solve the mystery, and they had such fun, a very cohesive group, and they reported having, just a great time, having that. The other group had some of those homogeneous, but it also had one person who was not, who was very different, who seemed as a stranger to them, who wasn't friend, and they too sat down and to solve the mystery. They reported that their group was not very cohesive, that at times it was uncomfortable. But you know what? They solved the mystery in half the time, and their solution was more creative. And the researchers suggested it was because they were out of their comfort zone. They tested their assumptions, their expectations. They thought outside of the box because they were out of their comfort zone. So when we're out of our comfort zone, when we're willing to expose ourselves to all the colors of love, all the expressions across race, culture, gender, orientation, faith, all those differences we have in the world, and we are open our heart more to. The Stanford Design School and the organization that's a private organization called IDEO, that literally is the acronym IDEO. Both share, they're related to each other. And they share this idea of the creative process, about how to be innovative. And they're designing different kinds of toothbrushes and gadgets and things like that. The first step in their creative process that they have written books about is empathy. It's not brainstorming. It's not looking at things in different ways. It's empathy. It's a people-centered innovation. And I think we need to remember that as we go about life, to first come with empathy. And the other steps are optimism, repetition, creative confidence, experimentation, and an embrace of ambiguity and failure. So while this is a step towards innovation, that remarkable, the work that they have done, another factor that they bring into what they do when they gather these teams together is there are certainly engineers in the group, but they also bring in sociologists, psychologists, mathematicians, teachers, people from, and sometimes ministers, people from different walks of life, because they want this diversity in what's thought about. And to come across this idea of empathy, optimism, repetition, confidence, experimentation, and embrace of ambiguity and failure, I think that's a formula for how we love in the world as well. That we need to continue to repeat this idea. It's Groundhog Day, and the story of the groundhog, but we also relate to the story about the movie The Groundhog Day. I think we all think about that now, probably more than the groundhog, and how I relate to that, because I feel like I'm repeating the same thing in life until I get it right. And so it's this repetition that we continue to seek, that we experience love within us. We know what's possible, but we don't always experience it out there. So we keep trying it until we get it right, until we're able to let go of our fear and our anxiety and our resistance, our holding back, our guardedness, our defensiveness. Because in truth, no one can take this love away from us. The love that's within us, so there's nothing to be afraid of. And we can just allow ourselves to open up and to embrace the ambiguity and the failure that happens, that's natural in human love. And open up to that. One of my favorite philosophers, Heraclitus, said that the awake share a common world, but the asleep turn aside into private worlds. The awake share a common world, but the asleep turn aside into private worlds. How powerful is this? So, as awakened people, we seek to find what's common. But if we get caught in our fear, then we are turning away and turning into our comfort zone and just experiencing life in a very small way rather than in a more open way, a more heart-filled way. And this is the awakening part of this. Now, we all have different opinions about the recent impeachment hearings. I even hesitate to bring it up in church today. Some people are depressed and angry, and other people are happy. The truth is, there is a picture painted by the media that there's only two sides in the room. And it's easy to see what those two sides are. But I think as we begin to explore life, even in the world of politics, there are more than two sides to everything. It's more complicated, and we have to seek to understand, to find those different levels. I mean, even with my own mind, there are certain issues I'm passionate about. There's some I'm kind of neutral about, or I'm willing to listen, or I need to understand more about. But I know that I am conservative, moderate, or liberal, depending on the issue. I am both pro-life and pro-choice. I am a gun advocate and an advocate for gun control. I am neither for closed nor open borders, but a compassionate and common sense approach to immigration that allows opportunities to pursue economic, religious, and social freedom in this country. So within me, there's a mixture of things like this. And I know that's true for everybody. There's a depth that it's not that simple. And yet, if we present things on the very surface, it can be black and white in that issue, not only racially, but in politics and religion. We need to allow for some expanse to happen, for some openness to what we experience in people. Heraclitus also is the person who's more often quoted, the famous one about no person ever crosses the same river twice. Which means that, Michael and I saw each other at 8:30 this morning. We prayed in this morning. But I saw him after the first service, and guess what? He was in a different space. And after this service, he's probably going to be in another different space. And so the creek out here flows with water. It's never the same water as we cross over it. And the people who we connect with are in different places as we connect with them. So let's don't assume they are who we thought they were last time we met. There's a continual expansion and openness, and we encourage that within ourselves to allow this evolution to happen. So for the love of God, we want to continue to seek to understand and love others the way they seek to be loved. This is the platinum rule that I'm really focusing on a lot in this community and in my own life, because I don't want to assume I know how somebody wants to be loved. I want to know who they are and more about them. And people sometimes say, well, I'm colorblind or gender neutral. Well, that's ignoring who that person is, really. We want to love them the way they seek to be loved, so we need to find out what that means. Because even to say, somebody is a certain race or a certain culture doesn't stereotype them either. There are many different expressions of all the colors of love, and it doesn't have to do with the color of our skin or the orientation of our relationships or of our denomination or anything like that. It has to do with the person is. And a great example, we talk about how a world that works for everyone here. I don't know if that's possible, but we're going to keep trying. And one thing that I've had people give me feedback about is in the very beginning of this service, we ask people stand up and greet each other, let them know you're happy they're here, and there's a lot of hugging going on. Well, I got some feedback that some people don't like hugs, and I go, that's true. I don't always like hugs. I'm generally a hug person, but sometimes I'm in a space, and some people just don't like it at all, and especially if somebody's brand new. and they're sitting back there and they're like 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door, and suddenly people are going, "Hey, how's it going? We're glad you're here." Might be a little too much. So in this way of seeking a world that works for everyone, what we want to do is honor where they're at, where they want to seek. So that's why I've changed it up a little bit to say a handshake or namaste. And if you're not wanting germs, or you're just not wanting to be hugged that day, and namaste is fine. We all of us can love, no matter whether we're putting up this, or we're putting out this, or putting out this, or this, or whatever kind of we want to do. That we want to love people the way they seek to be loved. And we also are willing to talk about what we need in love, to ask for what we need, because if we're not asking for what we need, we probably won't get it. Even in close relationships, friendships, family, just seek to understand and find ways that we love each other, to connect with each other. The spiritual teachings of New Thought, which includes unity and centers for spiritual living, divine science, and other different denominations, really came to age in the early 1900s. It's based on ancient philosophies, ancient religions, but really the writers came of age in that time, and there was like hundreds of books written during that time. It was also an interesting time as we talk about Black history and our spiritual heroes who were African American. African Americans were also finding their power at that time and seeking to take responsibility for their lives, not be a victim. And so many latched on, like W.D. Boyce and Marcus Garvey latched on to the teachings of New Thought because they saw it as a way to be empowered and to empower others. And so they were doing these readings, and they advocated for empowerment. They worked with the NAACP, and other organizations that empowered African Americans. W.D. Boyce said, "Believe in life. Always human beings will progress to greater, broader, and fuller life when you believe in life." So it's this magnificence they were discovering. But the problem was, this New Thought is not clear-cut in the way that we think that, when we're first students of or watch movies like The Secret, we think, well, all we have to do is think positive and our life will come together. Well, it doesn't always work that way. A plus B doesn't always equal C. And part of the reason is we have cultural beliefs. So these African Americans that were felt empowered in these ideas of New Thought, but they were still being faced with suppression and racism and bigotry and violence towards them. So as they became empowered, they were shut back down. Examples of Tulsa, Oklahoma is a great example. There was an area called the Greenwood District that was segregated, and so prosperous was this segregated black neighborhood that they were called Wall Street, Black Wall Street. They had their own banks, their own stores, their own schools, and everything was even more prosperous actually than the rest of Tulsa, which of course brought some angst around. And there was a situation where somebody was blamed, a black person was blamed for assault on a white woman, and there resulted some riots where people died, and then suddenly an angry white mob came through this Greenwood district, destroying stores and banks and homes. 10,000 people were homeless. $1.5 million in real estate and $750,000 in personal property was destroyed. And this was back in 1921, so you can imagine that now that value is worth over $30 million. And it was just swept under the rug. Nobody talked about it at all. The whole thing was suppressed. So this is the whole time this is the time when New Thought was really coming of age, and so how exciting, but then there's still the reality is this suppression and violence towards African American communities. And it was happening it was happening here in the Valley too. It wasn't like just in Tulsa. This is just a dramatic thing. And it wasn't until the 90s when the Oklahoma legislature finally acknowledged that it happened. And they gave scholarships to descendants of people who lived in that area, as well as made a park and honored to take responsibility for it. Maybe it was not as much as they could have done, but it was something. And I think as a culture, we have to tell the truth. We can't hide in things. We have to be willing to speak up. It doesn't mean we need to feel guilty, but we need to take responsibility, and we need to acknowledge that's what's happened, and we need to find a way to be willing to have conversations about it and willing. I know I had a conversation with a trans man a couple years ago, and I said something that was ignorant. I didn't know it was at the time, and he got really angry at me and let me know how ignorant I was. And I could have walked away and wished I hadn't said anything, but I stood there and listened, and I reflected what he was saying. I understood because as a straight white male, I just didn't know. I didn't know what I did not know, but I know now, and I was willing to hear it. And I learned a term this past week that I just love. It's called edge walker. Have you heard of this term yet? So an edge walker is somebody who walks between the worlds of different people and has the ability to bridge that gap between people. Often they have a strong inner life, very grounded in spiritual principle, and they're focused on the possibilities of connecting people. And I love this idea, and I recognize this edge walking in many people in this room, both in political and religious and cultural situations. And on March 7th, I'm going to do a workshop on this about how to be an edge walker, how to increase your ability to edge walk, and to bridge the gap between different belief systems and expressions, just how to love people. Because what we know about this philosophy is that it's multi-level too. It's not just this new thought, because often we experience that A plus B doesn't equal C, and we're confused by that. We wonder if this is even true. But we always know that we may not always get what we pray for, but we always get what we pray from. So this consciousness that we find within ourselves, within our deepest truth that's within us, that Michael was talking about the meditation retreat we had a couple weeks ago, and how beautiful that was, that we could experience this love, and we can all experience it in this inner life that we have, this contemplative life. So we know that it is this love of God that sustains us in every way, that can lift us up even when we feel disappointed or anxious or scared. We can find this resolution. We can find a renewal within the Spirit of God within us. Howard Thurman, who I've always respected, another one of these African-American spiritual heroes, writer and philosopher, has written a lot about the contemplative life. And he said, in the cultivation of silence, our strength is found in using it as a door to God. So an opening. And he went on to say, the roots of my pride are exposed and may be destroyed in me. Yes, destroyed by the sheer love of God. So that which is false, that which is a lie within ourselves is exposed in the love of God. And we recognize that this is our source of love, our openness. It may not be an easy path. It may be uncomfortable in this diversity of love, all the colors of love that we experience, and it is possible if we're willing to open up to these greater truths. So I'm going to invite Diego to play this song, because I think it's a great song for us to talk about the journey of love that we're going through, that if we just allow Spirit to be that which is our ground and our root, we can create through this.
With your strength, with your peace, in your loving grace, I release. With my faith and my belief, heal me, heal me.
So as we step into prayer, we know that is this spiritual awakening within us, this connection with Spirit that fills us, that we just find a sense of peace, a sense of love within us that can be an inspiration for us to continue to seek to love, to seek to understand, to ask, to be an edge walker, to live on the edge of truth and know that there's a deeper love within us that runs deep, that runs the current of life. And it is this that guides us, that lifts us up, that sustains us in all ways. Even when we are struggling, it always sustains us. For this we are so grateful. And know it is already. And so it is. Thank you for listening today. Please know that wherever you are, Spirit is also. And that good things are happening through you in every situation you experience. Feel free to check out our website for upcoming events, and if you're able, join us for one of our Sunday services at 9 a.m. or 10:30. In the meantime, know that you are led by Spirit, guided by wisdom, and protected by love. And so it is.